I'm 84 years old, and most mornings I wake up before the sun because my body doesn't know how to sleep in anymore. When the house is quiet like that, I can hear my own thoughts too clearly. That's when everything I spent a lifetime avoiding finally shows up. I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. I don't need anyone to tell me I did my best. I'm telling it because I don't have much time left, and there are things that feel heavier when they're carried alone. These days, my world is small. One chair by the window, a kettle that whistles too loudly, a calendar with more crossed-out days than blank ones. I move slower now, and people speak to me more gently, like I might crack. What they don't realize is that the cracks were already there long before my hands started shaking. I used to be a busy man. Important, I thought. I used to measure my days in meetings, deadlines, phone calls. Now I measure them in pills and short walks to the mailbox. Time has a different weight when there isn't much of it left. Sometimes I try to remember when it all started, not the regret, the momentum. I was in my early 20s when I decided who I was going to be, or who I thought I needed to be. I had just gotten my first real job, the kind that made my parents proud. I wore stiff shirts and cheap ties, and I walked faster than everyone else, like I was late for something important even when I wasn't. Back then, success felt clean and simple. You worked hard, you moved up, you provided. That was the deal. Nobody talked much about balance. Nobody I knew talked about feelings. We talked about mortgages and promotions and keeping our heads down. I met my wife when I was 27. She laughed easily. That's what I remember most. She had a way of making ordinary things feel lighter. We didn't have much money, but we had plans, and at that age, plans feel almost as good as having everything figured out. When our first child was born, I promised myself I would be a good father. I meant it. I really did. I just didn't understand then how quietly a promise like that can slip away without you noticing. I started staying late at work. At first it felt necessary, then it felt normal. I told myself I was doing it for them, for the house, for the future. I believed that. I still think part of me was sincere. There were dinners I missed, not all at once, just one here, one there. A school event I couldn't make because of a client call. A weekend trip postponed because something urgent came up. Each time it seemed reasonable, temporary. My wife would save me a plate of food. Sometimes she'd sit at the table until I got home. Over time, she stopped waiting. I didn't notice when that changed, or maybe I did and I chose not to look too closely. The kids grew the way kids do. Gradually, then all at once. One day you're tying their shoes. The next, they're tying their own and barely looking back. I was there, technically. I lived in the same house. I paid for things. But presence is more than proximity, and I didn't learn that until much later. I remember coming home one night and finding my son asleep on the couch with his school project spread out on the floor. He must have waited for me to help him. I stepped over the poster board and went upstairs because I was exhausted. I told myself I'd make it up to him. I don't remember if I ever did. The years blurred together. Promotions came, raises, a better car, a bigger house. People shook my hand and told me how well I was doing. I nodded and kept going. There was always another rung on the ladder, another goal just out of reach. At home, things grew quieter, not in an angry way, in a tired way. My wife stopped asking me when I'd be home. The kids stopped asking if I could come. Silence can be comfortable if you don't look at it too long. I told myself this was adulthood, responsibility, sacrifice. I thought love was proven through effort and endurance. I didn't understand that love also needs attention, and attention is something I gave almost entirely to my work. The cost didn't arrive all at once. It never does. It came in small, forgettable moments. A conversation that felt awkward because we hadn't talked properly in weeks. A birthday gift chosen quickly, without much thought. A look on my wife's face that lingered just a second too long before she smiled and said it was fine. I learned how to apologize without changing anything. I learned how to promise more time later. Later became my favorite word. When the kids left for college, the house felt strange, too quiet. I assumed that was normal too. That's what everyone said. I threw myself deeper into work. There was space to fill, and work was always happy to take it. My wife and I started living alongside each other instead of together. We were polite, we were civil, we were lonely in the same rooms. I don't think either of us knew how to bridge the distance anymore. I thought we had time. The turning point didn't come with fireworks. It came with a phone call at my office. My wife had collapsed. Nothing dramatic, just sudden. By the time I got to the hospital, she was already gone. I remember sitting in a plastic chair, staring at a vending machine, thinking about an email I hadn't sent. That thought still disgusts me. Grief doesn't always look like sobbing. Sometimes it looks like confusion, like your mind reaching for familiar patterns because it doesn't know what else to do. After the funeral, the house felt unbearably empty. Not just because she was gone, but because I realized how little of myself I had left there. The walls were full of memories I hadn't fully lived. My children came by, but it was different now. They had their own lives, their own families. They were kind, but kindness isn't the same as closeness. We didn't have a shared language for the deeper things. That's when the clarity arrived. Late, unforgiving. I saw my life not as a series of achievements, but as a collection of absences. I had been so focused on building something that would last that I missed the people who were already there. You can't fix that with apologies. You can't schedule your way out of it. Time doesn't refund what you didn't spend. Now, at 84, I have a lot of hours to think. Too many, some days. I replay moments I brushed past. Small chances to stop, to listen, to choose differently. They don't come back changed. They come back exactly as they were, and that's the hardest part. I'm proud of some things. I worked hard. I provided. I wasn't cruel. But pride and sorrow can sit in the same chest. They do, every day. People sometimes ask if I have advice. I don't like that word. It sounds too neat, too confident. All I have are truths I learned too late. I learned that assuming there will be more time is a quiet gamble. I learned that being busy can feel like being needed, but they're not the same. I learned that success can fill your calendar and still leave your life empty. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in any of it, I'm not telling you what to do. I wouldn't dare. I just want you to know how easy it is to wake up one day and realize the people you love learned how to live without you. I used to think I'd be remembered for my work, for my discipline, for my drive. Now I realize memory is built in kitchens and living rooms, in ordinary moments you don't put on resumes. My remaining time is short. I feel that in my bones. I don't know how many mornings I have left with this quiet. I've made my peace with some things. Others still ache. When I look back, I don't wish I had failed less. I wish I had stayed more. Stayed at the table. Stayed in the room. Stayed present when it mattered, and when it didn't seem like it did. That's all I have. Not a lesson. Just a life, seen clearly at the end. If this meant something to you, hold it gently. You don't have to do anything with it right away. Just don't assume it will wait. I'm 84 years old. The sun is coming up now. I'll make my tea and sit by the window, and the day will pass, the way days do at this age, quietly, whether I like it or not.